Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Times podcast. I am your host, Kevin Bradley, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Kevin Gallagher. And now I know you're looking at me and I know what you're all thinking. Kev, why do you have the beard again? Kevin G has made fun of you for it. It's not really a good beard and it's too light. It just looks bad. You have a baby face. Well, I felt that the respect I have for today's guest and his impressive beardage made me want to pay homage to him in some way. And this pathetic attempt at a beard is basically all I've got. And I'm going to read him in as I've been known to do for past guests of this podcast. But before we do, I just want a real quick brief shout out to sponsors of the show, No Judges Needed. For all of your BJJ gear and casual wear needs, please go to www.nojudgesneeded.com, pick everything up, and then get to the checkout. Realize it's a lot of money because, quality ain't cheap. But remember that your friends at the JJT are here to help you out with the promo code JJT, netting you 20% off all purchases. You can't fathom a deal this good. So, pause this video and go do that. Just buy them all out of stock. Yeah, no, we'll wait. Just
You can maybe grow a beard out. It will be
in the time it takes you to do this. You could grow a better beard than I've been working on for months. So once again, thank you to the sponsors. No Judges Needed. They've been with us for a long time, and they are continuously gassing us up. We love you guys. All right, now back to today's guest. Today, we welcome BJJ Black Belt, instructor at Derby City Martial Arts, and founder of the wildly successful BJJ YouTube channel, Chewjitsu, which offers advice and insights for grapplers of all skill levels. Easily the most handsome man in the game, Nick Chewy Albin. Chewy, thank you so much for stopping by. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've never been introduced as the most handsome, so I appreciate that. That's a new one for me.
Well, I gotta say I might be tipping my hand a bit, but that's my opinion, and dang it, I'm sticking by it. I'm real quick. I want to say sorry to Flavio. He just edged you out. Flavio Almeida, other friend of the show.
Flavio's a good-looking man.
He is a good-looking man.
He's a handsome man.
His chin is just regal, and you can see it under the beard, which says something.
Regal. That's a good one. That's a good one.
So, Chewy, what you got going on today, man? How's life been treating you?
Life's been fantastic. Same as always, pretty much training and working on the different things that I have going on, and just that's about that. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it's good stuff.
Now, for the 2 or 3 of our audience that are possibly unaware, could you give us a little bit of insight into your YouTube channel, what you're trying to use your platform for, and basically just some cliff notes for us?
So, I mean, the channel's sort of taking different turns and things like that, but basically, I share everything from technical advice to answering, like doing Q&As and things like that with questions that a lot of people have that sometimes they don't feel, it seems like they don't feel comfortable asking someone, or if they just want a different perspective on something. I have questions that I sometimes answer that aren't even necessarily jiu-jitsu related, but kind of are. And the whole sort of mission, I guess, with the channel is I gained a lot through grappling, both as a person, both skill wise and all that kind of stuff in competition. That's been great, but also it fundamentally changed me as a person for the better. And I've seen it do that for a lot of my students. And so this is just simply a manifestation of that. I'm just trying to extend a hand because I feel like a lot of times, like a great example is recently I talked to a orthopedic surgeon. We had him on the podcast that Eugene and I do. And we were talking on that podcast, and he was saying he became an orthopedic surgeon because when he was a kid, he was involved in a really bad accident, and the orthopedic surgeon made it so he could walk again, right? So if it wasn't for the skill of this doctor, he would have not been able to walk. And so that's why when he became older, he's like, I want to be able to do this for someone else. And so for me growing up, I ended up being in a situation where I was a young kid who got jumped, got beat up. And I went through a lot of stuff when I was in my early teens and things like that. And wrestling and jiu-jitsu and grappling in general brought me connection to human beings it's been really strong and profound. And it's given me different things in my life, from confidence to physical abilities and all this different stuff that have transformed my life. And so, just like the doctor wanting to do that for other people, that's just my way of doing it. I like this thing. This thing's given me a lot. I just want to sort of give that back to others. And that's what it is.
That's cool, man. I think about that a lot whenever I think about guys, and this is something that, for those of you that are lusting after the public spotlight in your social media endeavors. Like, I think a lot about that. If you know who Gary V is, I'm sure all you guys know who Gary V. If you got an Instagram account, you've seen Gary V on there somewhere or another. Like, one of the things he always talks about is the idea of, you don't post content with the intent of catching people's eye. You don't post content, with that insight of saying, okay, what am I going to do to capture people's interest? You post content that you love. You post content that you're passionate about, and you hope that passion is enough to fuel interest. And when you talked about the idea of watching Jiu-Jitsu change lives and how it's changed your life and affected your life, there's obviously something that you're very passionate about and something that you have a well of knowledge in. You've been a black belt for how long? 5 years now, something like that. 10 years, something like that. You've been a black belt.
9. It's a little over 9.
Yeah. I remember you've been a black belt for a while. So you go out there and you start posting these things, and whatever happens. But you got there doing things that you love. Like, when you first started your YouTube channel, when you first started putting the information out there, what were your expectations? Did you think you would grow to the level of stature that you've gotten to at this point?
No, of course not. When I was posting it, it started off as a means to help out my students. So basically, I would initially post videos of techniques that we were working on. And then I started posting drilling videos because a lot of my younger guys were coming in to do open mat time, and they were coming in to drill, right? And I say that because, in air quotes, because they would come in and basically talk for a few minutes and they would just roll, right? And I was telling these guys, like, look, you need to drill. And so what I did was I started putting out videos saying, okay, if you don't know what to do, just drill these techniques. And they would correspond with whatever we were doing in classes. And so this way they could, do those. And then along the way, people started asking questions to different places that weren't my students. And so that's where like the Q&As came from. And I've even found that my students benefit from those, because a lot of times, like, I've had several times where, a new student comes into the gym, they're training, and then they have questions about jiu-jitsu, and I'm not at I'm not at someone's beck and call all the time, and so they're like being able to go through this database of information and say, man, I had a student just the other day said, man, I was looking for this thing and I saw your video pop up, and so I watched this video. I was like, perfect, there it was. And even sometimes, even like, it was funny, even higher belts, sometimes there was a brown belt that visited the gym last week, and I was showing this week, excuse me, and I was showing a guillotine setup in one of my recent videos, and it's just a change of grips. And he told me that he used the change of grips like 5 times successfully recently. So it helps the people that are inside the gym as well. But again, that's kind of where it spawned from. I didn't expect it to be this thing, Yeah.
It's cool, man. Like, I'm always refreshed when I hear things like that, because again, in the world that we live in, with everyone so, furiously chasing after that dream of becoming the next, what's the word they use for it? Internet celebrity or influencer. Right. Exactly. Right. It's cool to see people like yourself that are just, hey man, like, I didn't do this to become an influencer. I just did this because I love jiu-jitsu, and like, I started putting things out there, and before you know it, wow, it turned into something where I could maybe make a little money off of, or make a name for myself, blah, 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 into some kind of a business. But at the beginning of it, it was really just a means for you to display what you love, and what you love is jiu-jitsu, man.
Yeah. I mean, I spent probably the better part, because I started a blog when I first, when we were doing the business stuff. I started a blog like way back in 2012, because I was looking up business stuff for the gym, and it was like, you should start a blog. I didn't know what I was going to write about, right, but I'll start a blog. So I started writing a blog, and the blog became like this just place to deposit ideas on training philosophies and stuff like that I had, and just ideas. And what's interesting is I wrote posts in this blog for almost 3 years. And to tell you how like primitive I was in the idea of like, being on the internet at the time, I didn't even know how to check like if people were like looking at them. And so like I didn't think anybody was reading them anyway. So I was just posting this stuff out. And then later on, as I went back and I knew how to do the search features on like Twitter and all this stuff, I'm like, oh, people were actually sharing them.
Yeah,
People
right.
like them.
People actually read this shit, right?
Yeah. But what happened is by just moving from a place of my own enthusiasm, right? I was enjoying what I was doing. That sort of came into a situation where then I had like a lot, both the years of training, but also had the years of actual developing my own ideas of what I think about stuff, not what someone's telling me to think about, but I actually think this. And then so when the video started, it was just like, I'm ready to go. I'm locked and loaded. I've got years of experience. I've got, over a decade of experience, and I've got, nearly 5 years of like just chewing through my own training philosophies and ideas. And now when I come to share something, I have something to give. It was never like, post a picture, look at me. It was more of like, I want to give you something that you can use and that's beneficial to you, because I mean, that there's nothing better than that as a coach, is to help someone else out.
Yeah, man. So I think a lot when I think about this, and I think about, like, again, the modern world. The theme today is going to be, let's talk
one
about.
second. I felt like I needed to update Chewy's name tag a little bit just to
BJJ
Influencer. Take that shit off there.
I like that. Man, this is the Build Chewy Up show is man, this is getting good.
Okay.
I hate the term influencer, right? Like someone sent me a message the other day to like trying to like push something on there, like, hey, you're like one of the biggest influencers in jiu-jitsu. We would love to get you using this product or something. And I'm like, the idea of influencer, it's like, I'm not an influencer, I'm a coach. Right. I do videos and I coach people. That's what I'm not trying to be Instagram famous. You know what I mean? Like I'm moving from a place of whatever, and whatever happens, right? It's like when we do jiu-jitsu, we tell people, don't worry about the belt. The good things come if you find your own space or whatever. Just like I'm not worried about a belt. I'm not worried about like, what's my, this, that, or whatever. How many
what's my SEO? What's like how many interactions and impressions am I leaving with this post or whatever,
I mean, because I know how to do some of this stuff. Like I know how to do the marketing stuff. I'm a student of it, because I mean, you have to be a student of business if you want your gym to do well, right? But at the same time, I don't want to have to trick and connive people to do something. I want people to follow me because they're enjoying what's going on. You know what I mean? That's kind of the whole purpose. So if you don't enjoy it, cool. But I'm not going to like sort of, trick someone into doing something, and I'm not really that worried about, being like an influencer, that kind of thing. So sorry.
I think it's cool, man. I love all this, man. I want to continue down this road, because I have a little bit of a lunatic fringe in my brain about this shit too, because I lusted for that that influencer type label for a long time, and then I started realizing, what in the fuck am I even doing this for? It's ridiculous, And it's funny, because after I got to the point where I realized that it's really less about the influencer label and the people you reach, and more about just doing what you love, I'm becoming more successful with my endeavors, because now I'm not concerned as much about the outcome. I'm just concerned about putting good information out there, content, doing things that I love and that I am an expert in one way or another.
Yeah.
So the question I have for you is this: is like, tell me some of the things you think about when you think about our modern community, our modern jiu-jitsu community. I mean, particularly with athletes trying to vie for notoriety and slots on big events. And part of the way they have to do that is to go out there and promote themselves. And then they get these egocentric ideas that they deserve more than they got. And a lot of them are doing these things before they've actually put the time in to learn their craft. Like, tell me what you think about, like, yeah, you're an influencer. Yeah, you did all this stuff, but you didn't do any of this until you went out there and learned everything you could possibly learn about jiu-jitsu before you did that. Like, tell me what you think about those ideas.
So if we can rephrase the question, because I'll go off into all sorts of weird nooks and crannies. When you're talking about, are we talking about like the way that the community is, where people are all trying to get the eyes on them kind of thing? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's just in general. Like, you know what I mean? I ask questions like this all the time. I just really want you to start yapping. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's so like, what my question to you would be, what do you tell these younger athletes that are lusting for that appearance before they've actually put their time in to deserve the accolades?
Yeah, I think it's something that's kind of sort of it's out there in society, just in general, is that people do not appreciate the apprenticeship time, right? There is something special about the time that you spend in the shadows doing the work that you need to do, and being a devout follower of someone, learning their stuff, and basically taking it all in, and then eventually coming out and saying, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to step out into my own spotlight. Now, you can obviously do this in different ways along the way, right? And there's different like sort of methods that you could do, but a lot of times you see that there's young guys that, and women, I say guys just sort of gender, not specific to gender, but I think every jiu-jitsu guy says, okay, guys, right?
Right.
But
I got in trouble doing that a couple weeks ago with
okay,
Emily
guys.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
They were working from
not another story.
My female instructor, she's over there with like the females sometimes. She's, all right, guys, let's do this. She just doesn't. And she's talking to all women. But anyway, so I think that there's nothing wrong with it. I think that self-promotion is very important because, this is one of the things where you could be the most amazing grappler, but if you don't promote yourself in some fashion, then it's going to be a bad thing, right? Because you do want to, because especially if you're an athlete, and let's say if you're making all of your money from your ability to compete and things like that, I mean, you've got a shelf life, and it's not very long, right? So you better get out there and work it and do something while you got time. I am sad that a lot of times, because the lowest hanging fruit is basically trash talking. It's the easiest thing, right? So basically it's the easiest thing to grab people's attention, right? Is to like stir stuff up. And I wish there was more, if people were like better students of like, of these sorts of things, not just the training of jiu-jitsu, but the actual, like how you market something. There's a lot of different ways that you can market things, that it doesn't have to be like, I got to talk smack about this and things like that. And then going back to the apprenticeship, I wish that there was more of an appreciation, because we obviously have it. And a lot of times you see it that these people have apprenticeship, like, and they're completely, devoted to training. But then online, it's like they're trying to be the dude before they're actually the dude. Like I got this message recently, again, from the podcast, from our podcast DMs, and it's a blue belt. And he was basically telling us, I mean, like in his own way, but it came across as like, okay, guys, you want me on your podcast. So if you're ready to have me on there, I was on all of these podcasts. So
exactly.
I'm working my way up to the top. And if you don't act now, I'm going to be, I'm like, bro, look, I have black belts on the podcast all the time. Like if you make it to black belt, we can have you. And I have no problem having someone on like that. But like the way that you presented yourself, as in like, I am so lucky to have you on my podcast, right? Oh my gosh, thank you, sir. Like at that point, I'm turned off. I'm tuned off. I'm like, bro, get out of here. Like,
all right, hey Chewy, listen up, because I don't think you've been respecting me enough. You're talking to the silver medalist, New England Submission Classic white belt runner-up, silver medalist, and I need you to. I'm not gonna lie. I need you to put some more respect on my name.
Don't think I'm getting enough love here, man.
little respect.
How dare you, sir? But that's actually that brings me to a point that I also wanted to pick your ear as someone who is trying to raise up that next generation of grapplers. You're an instructor. You have a lot of face time with your students. Is that an element of the game, like for your competitive students, that you go over, like that social media presence? Like, do you talk with any of your athletes about how to like go about that in a way that's authentic to them, or is that not something that really comes up much?
It really hasn't come up that much, but I've recently seen a few of my students sort of dabbling into that range or into that realm. And so I'm doing a class at the gym later on this month where I'm going to kind of go through the steps, and I have them all filling out surveys, and then I'm going to walk them through like, okay, look, let's look at your stuff and give them some strategies to work with that they could use in order to present themselves in a particular light, right? Because again, giving them ideas where like, look, there's not just one way to do this. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and you can do so. Like, even if you are, like, for instance, when you've been training for 20 years, you got a few ideas to bring to the table. You can present yourself as like someone like, hey, I've got some ideas. If you're a little bit newer, you're still like in the early stages of the journey. So you, instead of being like trying to position yourself as the dude, why don't you like take people along for this ride that you're going through? That's a better way to do it, because then you're saying like, look, I'm not the dude yet. I hope to be someday, right? Just like everybody does. So let me take you along the ride with me, and I'm going to just share what I'm finding out. I mean, and granted, this is kind of how I do it anyway. I don't really consider myself the dude. I'm always like, this is just what I think. You know, these are my ideas, and take them what you want. But I think there's lots of different ways to do it. And so I'm doing a class for them in later this month.
That's an interesting perspective on that. I never thought about it in that terms, of the idea of saying, hey, look, I'm not trying to show you I'm an expert. I'm trying to show you like what I'm doing to become an expert in the road to get there. That's an interesting take on things, because that's something that I think that lower belts can relate to. Everyone can relate to. You know what I mean? Even upper belts, higher belts that have already kind of gone down that road can look back and remember those stages.
For me, a big example of that sort of relationship going badly would probably be something like Dylan Dennis and Marcelo, where like Dylan's antics on social media and in the culture sort of caused a rift. And, you know, part of that might be that it was something that was never discussed during Dylan's, you know, formative years as a grappler. And you're seeing that with a lot of grapplers that are coming up and getting their higher belts in this internet age, as they go immediately right into, I got to start talking smack and I got to start yelling at people in DMs in order to get fights, you know?
Yeah.
Where do
you the answer is you don't, right? Like, because there's other ways to create, you know, we'll use the word influence, that don't necessarily have to be based upon like trash talking or, you know, stirring the pot, so to speak. There's a lot of ways to do to create a connection with other people. But again, a lot of times this is something like when I talk to jiu-jitsu gym owners and things like that, like, you know, when you own a jiu-jitsu business, for instance, you have to become a student of lots of different things related to business, because, you know, you just being really good at jiu-jitsu does not mean anything. It's not going to keep the lights open, or the lights on and the gym doors open. So if you want to keep your gym doors open, you're going to have to become a student of other things, just like you're a student of jiu-jitsu. And so, you know, if people did, you know, a little bit more study into these things, there's a lot of different ways to present yourself in a way that could gain a strong connection with people that are following you, that isn't based solely upon, you know, stirring the pot.
Yeah, I mean, I wrestle with that idea a lot, because I talk to a lot of promoters. You know, we have contact with a lot of promoters through the Jiu-Jitsu Times and things like that. And I'm pretty close friends with Josh LeDuc, and it's something that is unfortunate, because it's kind of indoctrinated into the fight game or the entertainment business. Because never forget that, like, fighting is entertainment. You know what I mean? As much as we'd like to, as athletes, maintain that level of Bushido code. And I think in the gym, there's a different element of that. We're in the gym and we're talking to people, and I think in between the athletes behind closed doors, for the most part, there's also some few exceptions, but for the most part, there's a genuine Bushido code between competitors. But like, there's the part that I wrestle with myself is the idea of what it takes to sell an event versus what it takes to maintain the integrity of it. And somewhere in the middle there has to be that kind of dissection in order to keep businesses open and keep events profitable. And like, I see that. Where I get a problem with, and this is always the endless debate, and as we start talking about, is when you see guys that are just emulating the Conor McGregor, you know, template for success, or the Gordon Ryan template for success. And you look at these guys, you think to yourself, hey, bro, like, that's super cute, but you're like an 0-2 amateur fighter, and you know, and you're talking like you're ready to take on the world, and calling out people and slurring their mothers and stuff on Instagram and Facebook. Like, why don't you go out there and win a couple fights first, and then maybe we can work on your image. Go put the content in first, and that kind of brings us back to the overall theme of everything we're talking about. You know?
Yeah. I think it's, you know, it's important. Like, if you're gonna talk that way, you should be pretty darn good. Like, you need to be good, because nobody cares about a trash talker who talks smack, right? You should spend your time in the gym training rather than practicing your stuff you're going to say. And I think it's fine. It really is, to me. I really don't put much stock into it. And I think it's kind of it can be a good thing sometimes, where, you know, like, if a person, fighter, grappler, whatever they are, if they understand how to separate the entertainment from the reality, right? So if they go out and they fight or if they compete or whatever. And then obviously after it's done, right? You were doing it leading up to this thing. You get people sort of riled up, and then you have your match, and then it's just kind of all done with. And then you move on to the next one. I think you can see people that do that, and you can see that it's purely entertainment. They're just doing something because they're trying to get a bigger payday, and I can't fault them for that, right? And it's an effective tool if you do it right. I think it's just sometimes where you see like maybe younger people who are coming up, like they don't understand that like some of these guys, that's not how they are all the time. Like they might talk this way on Instagram, or they might say this in a promo video, but when you take them away, like they're actually kind of chill and they're nice to people when they see them and whatever else. It's like, but then you'll get these younger people that are seeing it and they think, oh, that's how they are all the time. And so they mimic this sort of caricature that they've created for themselves. That's kind of a character that they trot out for their promos and for all this stuff. And then they take it back in, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. And like one example that I think you specifically will agree with me on, given the fact that you've rolled with the guy, JT Torres never got anywhere by talking smack. He just got to where he is by being JT Torres. So, and he could have
lots of good athletes, you know.
He's just
good on the list of people that have got there just being who they are.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like, well, for a long time, I think just based on the lack of social media, there was never anything to be gained by being that incendiary for jiu-jitsu specifically. Like if anything, being agreeable would probably help you just get more matches, like if you, but
and it's interesting to talk about that too, the social media aspect and how our world has changed so much since the onslaught of social media. I mean, you see it in tons of different avenues, like the idea of degrading away what real experts are. Sometimes the people that are actual experts, and I guess this goes back a long way because I will never knock someone's hustle. I never will. If you got the moxie to go out there and market the shit out of yourself, and you are less skilled and less intelligent on the subject than I am, it's on me for not pushing harder to make sure people know that I'm an expert. I'm just using myself as a generalization. I'm just talking.
And if your hustle's knocking over banks, man, you just go for it, man. I'm never going to knock the hustle.
No, but what I see a lot and what I notice a lot with the onslaught of social media and the fact that we're constantly being bombarded with people's opinions, and we're constantly being bombarded with everyone trying to prove what a badass they are and talk about all the smack. Like it's really changing the dynamic of the world. Like we're not looking to experts for advice. We're looking to people that can talk the loudest and get the most views. It gets the most likes. And it's almost like a dumbing down of society in that regard sometimes.
This isn't new.
Yeah.
So like the social media is obviously you have all this stuff that's going on in social media has been going on. The only difference is you have like literally like an IV like drip hooked up to your vein.
And that's the point. That's not even interrupt you, but that's the point.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's so much more in your face now.
Which is why I tell my students all the time, like, I don't spend much time on the phone, right? I don't have much social media apps on it. I spend less than an hour a day going through them. I make my posts. I talk to the people within those posts. I maybe take a question or two, but otherwise, like my phone is either on, like it's on Audible, it's on like a YouTube video or something, a lecture I'm watching. Otherwise, it sits in the corner. I don't want to mess with it. It's not what I want to do. And so, one of the things is if we're talking about the marketing stuff, which is what we are, you want to be in the world, but you don't want to be of it. You don't want to be a product of social media. It's fine to use it. It's fine to mess around with it and use it for your means. But your life should not be wrapped up in this stupid phone or in social media because it's all bullshit, right? Like if all of a sudden Instagram went away tomorrow, some of you might lose some money or something like that. But as far as like your actual who you are as a person, that doesn't change, right? You are who you are. And so, again, you got to separate yourself from this stuff because it can be insidious. You can see people just scrolling through the phones all day long and they get nothing done. But this idea that the experts, this has been around for a long time because you can see this. You can go back to things like Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's a great example. Well, there was, I think it was it Dr. Laura or something who wasn't even a real doctor. And she was giving women advice on how to be like a really good wife or whatever. And in reality, she was like a woman that was stealing these like husbands from these other wives and stuff like that. So, these people that are completely contradictory to what they're promoting in some cases, but they promote it because of the influence that they have with people in these radio shows. And so you've seen this for a long time. It just it's one of those things where you have more options And if you're not careful, you can sit on this thing and you can just like lose your whole life to a friggin' phone or a computer screen.
I think that's very succinctly put, and I have a good follow-up. But really, since I am also a massive fan of the Audible app, what books are you listening to these days?
I just finished one. There's a book that I re-listen to at least about once a year just because I like the ideas in it. It's not very long. It's called the 80-20 Rule by Robert. I guess you'd say Koch or something. It's Koch.
Okay.
But that was an important book that I read back maybe 3-4 years ago, and I read it at the recommendation of a business mentor. And when I read the book, basically it's this idea that 20%, which everybody's heard the Pareto principle, 20% of something creates 80% of the results. And so, I started going in through the list of things because at the time I was working like crazy, doing a lot of different stuff, a lot of different projects going on. And I sort of said, well, what are the things I have to do? And I sort of had those listed. And then what are the things I don't have to do? Well, it's a lot of this stuff. So all of this stuff I started to delegate and hire people for. And then this stuff I kept so that I could actually have my life be the way that I want it to be. And I think that for a lot of people, you can get, it's even like our jiu-jitsu, right? You get 80% of your returns from a very small fraction of your techniques, right? Like you have your game that you do the best and that's your best stuff. You have other stuff you can dabble with. But when it comes down to like a competition match or a hard roll, a very small fraction of what is going to equate to the biggest results you have for the game. And so it's a useful book and it's got some useful principles, and it's just it's a useful way of thinking for people in their life, especially if you're someone that is if you own your own business, or if you are just strapped to the gills with time and work and all that other stuff.
That's interesting. I like that premise. I like the idea of turning it back into jiu-jitsu because it's very true. Like the more I try to use jiu-jitsu philosophies in my everyday life, like I feel like the better my life starts to become, man. Like let's talk a little bit about that because that's something that always intrigues me. Like I've noticed distinctly that since I've gotten my black belt, since I've dedicated my life to the pursuit of jiu-jitsu and consider myself to be, I don't like to use the word master, but I think it's fair to say that I have a mastery of jiu-jitsu to a certain degree. I think you can say that when you get your black belt, you can say that you have mastered the art of jiu-jitsu. And I'm not going to go put a coral belt on and go stand next to Helio Gracie, but I feel like I have that type of thought process.
Real quick, is it fucked up that I could so see you doing that just to see what happens?
Obviously. Obviously, it's going up on Instagram now.
Just like, my name's Kevin Gallagher. This is Jackass.
But the point I'm trying to make is that since I've reached that point of understanding something at that level, being able to pick it apart at the most minute levels in such a philosophical mannerism and retool the same things over and over again, it's changed the way I look at the rest of the world, the way I look at other things in my life. Have you found that a lot about what you do with jiu-jitsu, how it's made you change, how it's made you more successful in other areas of your life?
I agree with you. It's one of those things where I think it's anytime you spend a huge amount of time and a huge amount of effort dedicating yourself to something, it changes your thought process for a lot of things. Like for instance, I have friends that are musicians and they're very good musicians. And when they speak about music, it's the same way that I think about jiu-jitsu, right? They have the same sort of outlook on things where it's fueled by this deep learning that they've done in this particular subject. And so I think it only makes sense, right? Like, I mean, even sometimes when I get into situations that are a little scary, let's say related to a business situation, for instance, right? I'm like, well, I fought a dude in a cage, or I remember going up against that one really big guy at that competition and I came out just fine. So I'll just do it. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where you get a bit of confidence in yourself, and again, depending on where you were when you started jiu-jitsu, it could change you in different ways, I believe, because everybody comes into jiu-jitsu and gets something different. And I think that anybody who goes deep into some sort of learning of some sort of skill or art, they all get something different from it, depending on where they were at the time. And so I think that obviously it's 100% going to change the way that you sort of your outlook on life.
That's cool, man. Here's another direction we can lead this into, because I want to get you talking about jiu-jitsu, because I want to pick your brain, because you have a very big jiu-jitsu brain, and that's in that big giant enormous noggin on top of your shoulders. So You talked about how jiu-jitsu changes lives and how it's made you think in different levels, different than like that. Talk to me a little bit about what specifically, and I guess this is a tough question to answer, but tell me about what specifically you see about jiu-jitsu that has this effect on people.
Well, jiu-jitsu, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can think about. I mean, one is that jiu-jitsu is in a jiu-jitsu gym, you get into a situation where you're in a contained environment, and there's a lot of stressful stuff going on. So there's an idea that I have from I've read several books on that range from like some sort of obscure psychological stuff to like old tribal rituals, right? And for instance, with tribal rituals, when they would do transformative work in people, you would have to have a space that was contained, right? Because you can't have things just coming and going. It has to be a contained space. And then they would the idea is that you would have to apply heat to someone, meaning not physical heat, but like heat, as in pressure, stress. Right. You're going through it. And then afterwards, you have to have that ability to be in that environment for a while, and then kind of come forward and go backwards and back and forth. And so with your gym, you have a contained space where both it's contained by the walls around the gym, but it's also contained by the culture and the community of people that are there. Within that space, you're then faced with challenges, stressful situations, your own anxieties, frustrations, happiness, joy, anger, everything. The whole gamut is circling around the whole thing that you're doing, right? If you go to a competition, you can feel the elation of getting the gold medal on your neck and being standing on top of the podium, or you can have the gut-wrenching sort of bottom, like sort of pit in your stomach after you walk off the mat and you lost the first match after traveling across the country for this competition that you've been training for 8 months, right? Whatever, you get these things where all this stuff's going on, and that changes who you are, right? That makes you a more self-reliant person in a lot of cases. It makes you a more confident person, because one of the things that you see over and over again is that people will a lot of times undersell themselves. They'll think, I can't do this, I can't whatever. And then when they do jiu-jitsu or grappling or whatever it might be, they end up going through the situation, which is the case with me, and you realize there's more in me than I think there is. Because maybe you were staring the big guy down who just looked like he was a monster, and you beat that person. Well, you just told yourself a different story. You got a different story for yourself. I remember one of the guys at my gym he's in his mid-30s. I remember him. He lost like 100 pounds. We literally have a picture with him doing the Jared from Subway picture, where he's holding out this pair of jeans and you could fit another person in there. And, he got off like all the different medications he was on. And I remember when he won a competition, he was on the podium, first medal, standing up there. He steps down and he comes up and hugs me. And he looks at me dead in the eye. And you can see, not crying, but you can see there's some emotion going on in his eyes. And he says, Chewy, thank you. And I'm just thinking, man, no, good job today, man. I'm proud of you. And he says, no, thank you. I've never been a winner at anything. I've never won anything before. And then, like, a grown man's telling me this, I'm right there in the heart. So he just got me in the feels. And it's like, I don't know how to say anything. But what you see in that situation is that man now has a different sort of story that he can tell himself. And that story then is I'm not a loser. I'm a winner. And I've done this. I did this. And with the help of other people. And I can do a lot of other things. And so, those are some examples. But I think it's the transformative situation of jiu-jitsu is that fact that when people come in there, they're placed with a lot of stress. And that stress can be different for different people. I've had women come into the gym where they were coming in there because they were attacked physically, and they wanted to take the power back, and they wanted to feel like they could physically do something. I had a teacher one day where she was probably about 5'1", maybe 105 pounds, a tiny little woman, right? And I remember she came in because she had been sort of roughed up by someone when she was coming out of her school or whatever. And she starts training jiu-jitsu. And I remember it was about 8-9 months into it. I remember we had a new guy come into the gym. It was this very first week or whatever. And so he was rolling that day. And I typically don't let the brand new guys roll with women because sometimes they can be really spazzy and I don't want them to get hurt or beat up or something like that. So she goes over and rolls with them, and I didn't see this. So I go up and I'm getting ready to change them. I'm like, hey, guys. And she looks at me and she just says, like, back off. I got this. And so I'm like, okay. So I stand back there and watch, and I watch this little 5'1" little 105-pound woman whip around this guy's back and choke him out multiple times. And, she gets up and she's like, she doesn't like rub the guy's face and everything, but she gets up and she smiles very big at me. Like, I just did something that I like. This guy's brand new. He's going. He doesn't know any difference of how to slow down. He's going. He's grabbing on my head, and I fought through it and I choked him. And so that's a cool thing, because now that's a different story that the person has. She's no longer the person that got beat, like got roughed up outside the school. She's the person that says, you know what? I just took a grown man who weighs 180 pounds and I was able to get around his back and choke him, and he couldn't stop it. Like, that's a new story for that person. And again, it's done in a contained environment where we can apply pressure, stress, and all the other things that's going on there. And we can do so in a safe environment that's contained inside that gym where people can come in there, and that's the transformative effect from it. And so I think that's one of the things that's really important through jiu-jitsu.
I just before we move on, I would also like to state that I've seen a similar transformative effect, and I think we all have, in the opposite way, where instead of empowering people in need of empowerment, it humbles people in need of humbling in a way that is a lot safer than how it might happen outside. Like, instead of getting held up at gunpoint after thinking your whole life that you're indestructible and you're hot shit, and that's what transforms you. Instead, you come into a jiu-jitsu class thinking like, I was varsity football, I'm like the big guy, I'm hot shit. And then a little girl just completely mangles you from pillar to post, and in a safe way. You are defeated. You experience defeat repeatedly in a safe way, and you become able to either handle it or you leave. There's a lot of people that leave, but you're able to experience a visceral physical failure in about the safest way you can. It's not like you're going into a Muay Thai gym and you're just getting lit up. You are being submitted, and then you start again, and submitted, and then you start again. And I've seen D1 athletes who are the biggest jocks on the planet be hammered into more humble beings by repeated experiences like that. And so I wanted to make sure because I feel like that it's beautiful that it can happen in both spectrums.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It all depends on where you're coming in, because again, this is why a lot of times I don't like the idea of, I mean, it's just me with changing the word a little bit, but I like saying path, right? I don't like saying jiu-jitsu journey so much. I like saying your own path in jiu-jitsu, because it's unique to you, because wherever you start jiu-jitsu, that's what's really, that's what you're going to get out of it, because it's based upon where you're coming in at. And you're right. You can have people that are full of themselves and they're very this, that, whatever. And then they come in and they get humbled by the nerdy kid over in the corner who beats the brakes off of them. And it changes them as a person and makes them, a more humble person in some cases. And again, that depends on where they are as a person, So again, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, man. Jiu-jitsu, I say this probably once a podcast. It's one of those rare things in the world that will give you what you're missing. Like if you're an egocentric person that's maybe a little bit cocky, it's gonna humble the shit out of you. If you're it's possible. Yeah, not humble. But
it's not a perfect system.
Right. If you're meek and you need to be a little more confident, it's gonna give you that belief in yourself, and like, you just got to wait it out. And like, just FYI, man, that story about the dude getting off of the podium and coming up to you and telling you how much you changed your life. I mean, I relate to that so well as a coach, and it's almost got a little teary just thinking about it, because it really is one of my favorite aspects of teaching jiu-jitsu. It's, I enjoy working with world-class athletes. I work with UFC fighters. I'm talking about, I work with freaking world-class jiu-jitsu competitors that want to go out there and win the pans and do all those things. And like, I get a satisfaction off of helping them get to that next level, right? But I feel like sometimes, and most of the time anyway, I feel way more satisfied just taking the weekend warrior guy that, is, father of 2 kids that's kind of like a ho-humming through their life. It doesn't feel like they're really going anywhere, that needs some kind of release to make them feel empowered again. Or, the guy that, like you said, has never won anything, never been a winner, always kind of just sitting back in the dust and has that lack of lust inside of them. Like, it's so gratifying for me to work with those guys and allow them to feel how amazing it is to be empowered in that manner, man. So it really like it really was, man. It really got me like, oh wow, it got me in the feels, man.
Well, I would just say that, Kev, it's not even about helping your guys. You just like helping people. Like when Nicky Rod needed someone to corner him, you're just like, yeah, man, I'll do it.
I like helping myself too sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I think that is we're talking about instruction and what it means to instruct people. And I think having two seasoned instructors in jiu-jitsu is a perfect time to ask this question. But both of you have seen the way jiu-jitsu is taught, I would presume, change a lot in a fairly short amount of time. From the stories I've heard from the people I've talked to, jiu-jitsu it used to be basically just a blast furnace where you go into it, and if you can survive the nonstop action rounds, like harshness, then you get promoted. And that is how it's still very much for the little guy, but it's also not full of like stop and help, and I've seen it get a lot more scientific. There's a lot more ways to approach the act of instructing. And what I would love to know is, from both of your perspectives, do you think there is still more ways that the instruction of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can improve? Or have we basically figured out roughly how to do it effectively, and there's not much more room for innovation there?
Oh, I mean, if you think that there's no room for innovation, you're in a bad place. You know what I mean?
If you're not growing, you're dying.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. It's definitely improved from back in the years, obviously. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, that's kind of to me, that in itself, that's like an idea like, all right, we're good enough. That kind of idea of complacency, that's kind of a death sentence for anything. I mean, imagine if you said, my jiu-jitsu is good enough, I don't need anything else, I'm good. I mean, that's a bad mindset.
Uh-oh. Oh no.
There he is.
Hey, Chewy. You're Chewy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
You good?
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
Good?
Sorry, your audio
clicked out for a second. We're good. Now keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Someone called out to cancel, but there are people that have that mindset of like, I'm good enough. I mean, look at the idea with leg locks. I mean, for a long time there were high level black belts that would, like leg locks, this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, everybody's using them. People are getting really good with them, but you're gonna, in the face of that evidence, we don't need those. I'm good enough. I mean, it's there's always more that can be done.
I would love to preface that I don't think that. I was just posing the question.
Yeah, no, I got you. You're just kind of just like throwing it out there. I got you.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, you always have to be looking for new ways to keep people innovated. You have to be thinking of new ways to keep people, coming back to jiu-jitsu, because like I didn't start training until about 2009. So I kind of predate the nice, comforting jiu-jitsu world, but not by that much. Definitely not by the world that Chewy was living in when he came into the jiu-jitsu world. I'm sure it was just like, hey kid, can you do this or not? All right, if you can't, just beat it, because we don't have time to deal with your shit no more.
Close.
But in my opinion, my take on that whole idea is yes, we have entered a world where jiu-jitsu is becoming more friendly to less competitive, less combative minded people. And I think it's important to do that because, like we spoke of already, the beauty of jiu-jitsu lies way deeper in just learning how to fight and learning how to get in shape and all the other things that people use as secondary motives. I have private lesson clients all the time to come up and say, hey, I want to learn how to fight. I want to learn to get in shape. I'm like, all right, that's cool. You think that's why you want to be here, but you're going to find out it's way more than that. Mm-hmm. So, by keeping jiu-jitsu safe, by having entry programs, by looking after the white belts, it keeps people from coming back. But there's a certain element of jiu-jitsu that you just can't take away. Mm-hmm. And you can't take away that the strong will survive mentality, because that's what makes jiu-jitsu what it is. You have to put people in the boiler. You have to put people in the fire, and you have to make them learn to live through that, to realize, hey, wow, that sucked, but I'm still alive. Mm-hmm. I learned some things. I learned how to deal, because that's what makes jiu-jitsu great. That's what makes jiu-jitsu the greatest martial arts for self-defense, and everything we talked about growth. It's all based upon that. But as instructors, we have to care. So as instructors, we can't just be this nonchalant, wow, you're either going to do this thing or not, kid. Don't waste my time. You have to take the time to listen to your students. You have to take the time, even if it's out of the side of your mouth, to put your arm around someone that's broken that day. And, because I'm tough about this. I try my best. Like I'm not exactly a, hey, kumbaya kind of guy. I don't know if you knew that about me or not, but
for some reason your face just now looked like Robert De Niro from Casino, right. And I have no idea why. But
the point I'm trying to make is this: is that like I make it a point to go out of my way to make people feel included, to let people know, hey, even if it's after a roll, when everybody's tired, say, hey, bro, if you had a shit day today, that's part of what we're going through. Like I used to have shit days all the time. I still have shit days when I come to train sometimes. I still days when I come in and get my ass kicked. I got tapped by a brown belt yesterday or a couple weeks ago with a loop choke, and I lost sleep over thinking about it. You know what I mean? How bad I was about it. Because it was somebody from another school that I was like, all right, this kid's being cocky. I'm going to go show him what's up. And I got loop choked. But that's the point I guess I'm trying to make, is that you want to make it inclusive, but you can't strip away what makes jiu-jitsu great. I think most gyms are doing that pretty well these days.
Mm-hmm. I'd say so.
Yeah, I think that's really important, just because we can't really go an episode without talking about it these days. But with the state of the world, and ergo the state of jiu-jitsu being so perilous, we're seeing gyms having to close up shop, some permanently, and a lot of people at every level are losing sleep over it. I think that added compassion from coaches and that investment in students' lives. I mean, like I have like my coach Chris is very much that way. That was something I wanted to bring up earlier, is that have you noticed that your students have taken a lot more advantage over you having such an online catalog of content related to technique, now that in-person classes are not what they used to be?
Well, no, I mean, our classes are pretty normal right now. I mean, we're training.
Yeah.
So we're training. So we're doing the damn thing.
I'm in Florida, baby. We've been shooting guns and drinking margaritas and training the whole time.
I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things where I know gyms that never close down, and they're in hot spots, and they're all still training. So I mean, it is what it is, man. People make their own decisions. But
I'm not saying right or wrong or right. I apologize. I keep interrupting you. I apologize, but it is what it is. We're in Florida.
Oh, I mean, it's fine. I'm fine with it. Like it's just one of those things. Whereas if I know too many gyms where it's like, if they're not, these dudes should be dropping like flies if the thing was going to get everybody. They're not. But I think with that kind of stuff, man, I never did the Zoom thing. I thought it was stupid. I thought like the whole point of jiu-jitsu is the community, the people that I'm in there with, right? And that's one of the things that like that's what lights me up, is I'm inside the gym with people. We're talking. We're for all these different walks of life. And like, especially in these last couple months with everything that's been going on, and especially in the United States, like it's been this blessing where I literally come out of the gym and like, I shield myself away from most of the garbage that's on social media and the news and everything else, because it's all a bunch of junk that's just, it's on there for one reason only, and that's to get you angry and incite anger and emotions in there. And most of it is just completely, it's just downright lies most of the time, where they're completely not telling you true information. And it's like, how the hell do you get that? How is that journalism? How is that like real? Like, this is on a TV station and they're literally lying in the face of the actual, like the facts that are out on the situation, right? It drives me nuts. But people watch that and they associate themselves with whatever, and then they get all angry at each other. But then you come in and train and you realize like, oh, all this stuff that we separate each other by outside of the gym, like, it doesn't really matter when you're trying to choke each other. And you know what? Like, we got a lot in common. You're actually kind of a cool person. So even though like you're this or I'm that, like we're cool, right? And so again, that connection is so important, I think, for society, and it's been so important for me. So anyway, going back to your question, we already have an online database that's been going on for the students. I've had that going for a while, because this way, whatever I'm teaching gets recorded and put into the back database. So this way they can log in. If they're not around, they can see what we've been doing. If they've been off for a little bit, but otherwise, no. I mean, when the jiu-jitsu stopped, we basically rented out all of our weight training equipment, because we've got a pretty big gym here. And then when we opened, we just like said, here you go. you take all our stuff, go lift some weights. And then, we started getting back into small classes in June, and we're just back to training. And that's that.
If if this is too personal, you can feel free to let me know. But has the retention rate been pretty good? Like, did you lose a lot of people in the intervening time? Damn.
I mean, we lost some, but we didn't lose many students. Most of our students stayed with us. We, we would comp memberships and stuff like that. Like, hey, if you want to, like, whatever, that's fine. A lot of the students continued to pay because they wanted to support the gym and they wanted the gym to be there. So I'm blessed for some good people around us. We lost money like everyone else. But again, and this goes back to it. This is like me and my business partner. The amount of, like, the reason why our gym was able to basically weather the storm pretty much unfazed is because there's a good business in place, right? Like, there's a lot of things going on in place that have nothing to do with the actual training. And so again, if you're a gym owner, you've got to make sure, because if it wasn't the coronavirus, it'll be something else. I remember this gym was here during the 2008 crisis, right? We were here then, everything's boom, blowing up. And then everybody's losing their jobs and stuff like that, or freaking out about money, and they get nervous. So, it's endured that stuff before. And so if you're going to run a gym, you've got to be invested in the business, because here's why, the way I see it is, if your gym is run well and you've got a good, strong business, that then allows you to support people and then deliver to them. Because as the online bearded YouTube guy who gets questions from people, one of the questions that comes up all the time and has for years is, Chewy, I love my gym, I love my people, but the gym closed down because we didn't have enough students, or whatever happened. And then those people then were connected to this community of people. They were connected to this coach. It had become an anchor in their life, and then it's gone, right? And so I think that anyone that opens up a school, you have people that, and this is a coach to me, like you have people's desires, goals, dreams, aspirations. You have all these different things that are sitting on your shoulders, and you should bear that weight with a lot of responsibility. And it shouldn't be something that should be frivolous. It's like, I'm going to open up a gym because I don't want to work a 9 to 5, right? It's like, you should be working a lot more than 9 to 5, because you need to keep this thing going, because these people now depend on you, and so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with it.
I hear you. I see that a lot too, man. I got a lots of dudes that train that want to open up gyms, man. And like, I don't have my own gym, but I'm in the process of doing it. But I see lots of gyms open and lots of gyms closed, because it's not just about, when you open a gym, if you open a business, it's not just about saying, oh, sweet, now I don't have to have a job, I get to just go teach jiu-jitsu all day long.
That's right.
Because, brother, you got to keep them lights on. You got to pay for marketing. You got to be there to get students in the door. You got to have sales. You got to have the whole. You got
to learn entire new skills that you might not have had before.
Right.
Well, and to kind of go back to the thing that Kevin was talking about, like, as a coach, you should care. And I think it should come from a care, like, not even from a monetary standpoint, but like, if you're a coach and you don't give a shit about your students, why are you a coach? Yeah. Like, it's the wrong job for you. Go do something else, right? Like, do something else. But if you're going to be a coach, you should absolutely care whether these people come in, because to me, like, I feel blessed. I come in and I have these people come in, and if they have questions after class, whatever, I want to help them out. I want them to be there. I'm going to check on them. If they get injured, I check on them after, the next morning. How's everything feeling? Just because I genuinely care. And I think that's part of the reason why, like, like, for instance, retention. If you want to have good retention rate, people should feel like the people actually give a shit about them. Because if you don't give a shit about them, obviously when times get tough, they're not going to give a shit about you either. Right. So you have to pay that thing right out of the gate. You got to go forward, and you got to put that energy forward first.
I think I think it was to what you said about that anchor that you feel from the community. I feel like in jiu-jitsu, I and many others have found their tribe. That's the only term that I think is truly fitting for what I feel. It's a tribe that I belong to, that I am honored by, and I gain strength from. Like, just point of example, I just got engaged, and including Kev G, I think all but one of my groomsmen is someone I met through jiu-jitsu or the martial arts. We got one Taekwondo guy, and we're probably going to bully him pretty relentlessly the entire time. But,
nice.
Hey, Tristan. But it's, and that idea where I've like, one of my gyms has lost a few like purple belts that haven't like really kept in touch for months. And so it's stuff like, I've seen things that I never thought would happen. Like, people that I thought were lifers that have not been in it to such a degree that I'm like, yeah, they're not coming back. And it guts me You know, it really does. And so it's always good to hear that like gyms are doing well and that that tribe is sticking together. So, you know, congratulations to you for building that, you know, in Derby City. You know, that's really good.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Kev G has probably got to go. He's an international man of mystery, and his schedule is very, very important. Nick, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your time and your insights. This was definitely one of our more cerebral episodes, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun listening back to it. This is the time we usually give all of our guests a moment to plug any sort of like sponsors or things they've got going on. And, you know, aside from your wildly successful YouTube channel that we'll be chasing the tail end of for the next decade, at least trying to catch up. Is there anything you'd like to say here at the close, man?
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. And then, if someone's listening to this and if you don't know who I am, you can go to YouTube, you can put in Jiu-Jitsu, you can watch the videos. And then if you guys want to follow me more closely, I have an email, like an email list that I have that I mail every morning, from usually Monday through Friday. You can check that out if you want to. You can go to, it's jujitsutraining.com/pod, POD. If you go to that website, I prepared something for the listeners on the podcast here today, so they can go there and it'll have a couple little free videos and free jiu-jitsu ebooks, so they can get their hands on that. And one's a drilling ebook and one is a what is it? It is a game plan ebook for someone if they're getting ready for a competition, and it's some videos to explain that, so they can get that. But otherwise, you can just put in Jiu-Jitsu online and check that out.
All right. Well, everybody, run, don't walk to all of the things that Mr. Albin just plugged there. They're all quality content, and you can pick out. You can
Albin.
Start.
Albin. Call me by my government name. You know, like
when I was just real quick when I was sending you the Facebook link, I had to think about it for a second. Oh fuck, what's his name? I think I know it's Nick. What's his last name? I knew, but it took a second to get it working again.
Oh man, I like the one time when I was working announcing for the BJJ Woodstock for Jordan over at Subspectrum a few months ago. One of the guys there was there, like one of their second in commands in the organization, a guy named Mouse. He was like, "Hey man, we don't use government names." So I was assigned a nickname. And everyone else there was assigned a nickname.
That's cool.
And one day I'll tell you. But until then, this has been another episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Times podcast. Chewy, thank you so much once again, man. This was a really good one. Feel free. You can, if you are coming to YouTube, reminder, you can catch us on all available podcast platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. Please rate us 5 stars. It would really help us out a lot. And it would make us feel good. You know, it's always good to get that kind of validation. And I think we're a 5-star podcast, truthfully, you know, and when you're done listening to our entire back catalog, please go and check out Mr. Chewy's wonderful podcast. He's had amazing guests. It is definitely a worthy rival in the BJJ podcast scene. And with all of that said, I have been your host, Kevin Bradley, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Kevin Gallagher, and guest Chewy Jitsu. Respect yourself, respect others, and protect your neck. It's crazy out there. Good night.
R.I.P. Eddie Van Halen.